where we're giving the world a voice. We are a faith-based social justice forum where individuals give their perspectives on various topics. It's an opportunity to express their viewpoint, their stance, and their angle on justice issues affecting the community and globally. Each episode features guests presenting their perspective on things like climate change, the church, urban farming, and food insecurity, all through a unique faith lens. Come check us out. Give us your perspective. Welcome to Perspectives on Social Justice, where we're giving the world a voice. I appreciate everyone for logging in tonight and sharing with us. Tonight, we're talking about the Black church. Now, it's a couple of different things that are going on right now that is really seriously impacting the Black church. Number one is, of course, and has been for the past year or so, the pandemic. Also, when we talk about the pandemic, we can't help but talk about the vaccine. What role is the Black church and Black leaders, church leaders, playing in encouraging or discouraging those who will have faith in the vaccine? Also, we want to talk a little bit about the current administration, the Biden administration's impact as he introduced an executive order creating a new office for faith-based organizations and initiatives. So tonight we have a good representation, a strong representation of some leaders in the Black church who are going to share with us tonight on what they think the role that the Black church has played and will play in the life of the American, the African American, the person of color, your friends, your families, your community. And so I have some professionals in ministry with us tonight that will definitely make an impact. And so I'm going to start out with the Reverend Dr. Paul Q. Fortson. Dr. Fortson, thank you for joining us tonight. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and your contribution.
Thank you, Dr. White. It is so good to be with you again and all of these amazing preachers on this line. I'm Dr. Paul Q. Fortson, Associate Elder of the Paradise Church of God in Christ in Forest Park, Georgia. I hope maybe you've heard of that little Black church here in the States. I'm also the President and Chief Operating Officer of the Paradise Community Development Corporation. And where we do community impact programs, we do all kinds of things that help to empower and impact, from financial literacy to feeding the hungry to toy giveaways. We work with our city officials and our city leaders to make sure that we provide and help to provide the best life, the best to address the issues that are facing our community, which is why this program today and the White House Faith-Based Partnerships is so near and dear to my heart. So thank you for having me on tonight, Dr. Lairalaine, and I look forward to this great conversation.
Of course. And then joining us, we have the Reverend Angela Bullock, who joins us all the way. We have the South represented, and we got to have the North represented as well. Reverend Bullock, could you please introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Good evening. And Dr. Lairalaine, thank you so much for having me on this evening. I'm grateful to be a part. I am Pastor Angela C. Bullock of Basil AME Church in Cockeysville, Maryland, a church that's celebrating 155 years this year. And we are a small congregation with a mighty witness. And what we're doing in this season is preserving the history through a relevant witness. We have located actually in what was once a rural community, but over the years, a suburban community has been built up around this small rural community known as Foots Hill. And it's a very diverse population. And so we are beginning to connect with that community, the total community overall, and drawing from our resources and just getting to know one another. And so we are excited about what's going on in the community at large, and not just in our particular community, but in the global community, with this faith-based initiative that Biden is putting up in front of us for us to be able to glean from. And so I'm looking forward to the discussion tonight.
All right, all right. And then last but not least, we have the Reverend Dr. Herman Skip Mason, who has graced us with his presence and his perspective. Dr. Mason, I mean, it's to say that you need to introduce yourself would probably be, I don't know, because people already know who you are just by the name. But you just tell us, for those who might not know, who might not be enlightened.
Dr. Lairalaine, you're so kind and generous, and thank you for inviting me back. I know I'm not one of your regulars like Paul and others.
Oh my goodness!
But I'm going to be in this space with the Reverend Angela Bullock, all the way from Maryland. And thank you, my sister, and Dr. Paul, my classmate, and nice to meet you, Dr. Angela. I'm Skip Mason, pastor of the West Mitchell Street Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, located in the heart of downtown Atlanta, 560 Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. We used to be on West Mitchell Street, which was the back street, and we've been on that corner since the 1890s. The church was founded in 1882, one of the oldest CME churches in Atlanta. CME used to be Colored Methodist Episcopal Church, and it was later renamed in 1954 on the date of Brown versus Board of Education to the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. You would have known that, perhaps. It wasn't included in the recent documentary by Dr. Skip Gates, but that's okay, because we in the CME, we're going to tell our own story. I'm delighted to be in this urban church in the heart of the city, but we got a lot of urban problems. We have homelessness and transitional community. We have a desert neighborhood in terms of stores and those things that provide service to the community. But we have work to do. I'm optimistic about the faith-based initiative. And this pandemic season has really taught us how to pastor and worship outside of the church. And the lesson could not have come at a better time, because we became very comfortable in going into our churches on Wednesdays and Sundays for service, but the Lord had other plans.
That's right. That's right. And speaking of that, let's start our dialogue just on that, because from April of last year, we were encouraged not to assemble in person for worship, for Bible study, for choir rehearsal. So in the life of the church, I mean, especially the African American church, the African American church is assembly, community assembly is crucial as a major portion of the African American church. And so since, I guess, late March until now, and even now, it still impacts us. And so where are we? Well, I'm curious to know, where are we with our plans with our reentry plans? We talked about this last year when it first began.
So it's been for us just exactly a year.
Okay.
And we did our last service around the end of February. And I was scrambling a year ago this time, trying to figure out, now, how are we going to do communion for the first Sunday in March? And we were able to pull it off. You know, everybody was worried about having the communion elements consecrated and all that. I said, look, y'all consecrate your elements.
Absolutely.
Get your elements ready. Take pictures of it. Create a nice communal setting. Send me pictures and all. And we did that thing. And the Lord was praised. We had communion. I was still using my phone. This was before StreamYard and Boom and other things. So I'm trying to do all of this, but we made it through. It has been challenging. And now, a year later, you know, yes, we have been asked, when are we returning? And my response is no time soon. We still have some things that we have to do. We have to make sure, one, that we have a safety. We have a congregation that is safe and vaccinated. And I know you're going to discuss that later. But I've encouraged my members to do some research, pray, and you make your own informed decision about getting the vaccination. But when we come back into the building, I want there to be some reasonable understanding, security, and expectation that most folks have been vaccinated as well. But I don't want to lose what God has given us in this season. We have more people
Hallelujah.
watching our Sunday broadcast, participating in Sunday school on the Sunday mornings, Bible study. We do conference lines for Bible study and Sunday school, and then we're live on Sundays. And so I'm grateful more people are coming and engaging in the worship experience. And so these have been the wonderful takeaways. I know folks miss the building, and I miss the
Mhm.
dynamic of the interaction of pastoring and preaching, the call and response. It's tough, and I'll end with this. It's tough trying to preach to a screen. That's tough, but we try to do the best that we
Right.
could. But I know we'll talk more about it, but that's sort of where we are. No rush to get back in the building, but we do outdoor services. So first Sunday of each month, we're in the
Mhm.
parking lot. We'll be in the parking lot this Sunday, and then on Easter Resurrection Sunday, we'll be in the parking lot praising and worshiping.
Okay, all right. Now, Reverend Bullock, you are you're in the north, on the northeast, but you're still in a remote. I won't say remote. I'll say in a community, a non-urban community. So
Yes.
how has that? How have we fared out during this time since last year?
Right. So, it's been a challenge. It's been a great challenge in that a lot of my members are older members. I am the youngest person in my congregation. And the members have, been very clear when it first started, when it first hit. Oh, we're not coming out. We're not doing this. We're not doing that. But what we have done is, because they are all located near the church, one of the things that I've been able to do is to, after maybe the first 3 months, because the first 3 months, nobody was really moving anywhere. But after the first 3 months, I was able to take to them the communion elements. And so I took care packages and delivered them every month, the Saturday before, maybe a couple of days before the first communion was to happen. And so they were able to have their elements as they liked, and they were able to have some type of devotional I would always give them. And of course, I would give mask and hand sanitizer. And so they appreciated that. And that's kind of how we've been doing things. And then the winter showed up. And so in the winter, I just made one drop with enough communion and enough devotionals for that entire time. The congregation initially stopped giving because we were not coming to the building. We were not gathering and assembling. And so the giving decreased greatly. And we are blessed because of the community that we're in. And there are members in that community who have a sense and an understanding about the nature of the church. And so we have one member who each quarter has given us a very sizable offering, just because he wanted to help out. He had a heart to help. And so we are thankful for that, because without that, with the decrease in giving from the membership, we were very challenged in paying the bills, because even though we were not assembling together, the bills still had to be paid. And
Right.
so his contributions were very helpful in that way. And we are thankful.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So you say the giving actually went down.
Yes, because people weren't coming together. And
Wow.
so for many people, if I don't come into the church building,
Right.
and so
And,
I had to do some teaching around that.
right. I'll bet. I wonder if that's a trend that we would see in the rural congregations, because most of the pastors that I speak to in suburbia and in the metropolitan areas, they initially reported an increase. Now, Dr. Fortson, in terms of the reentry, I understand that you guys are having regular service and have been having regular services for how long?
Yeah. So what we've done, and I echo all of the sentiments. I echo all the sentiments that the other preachers here have said, as well as some of the other strategies that we've employed, like the outdoor services and these virtual platforms, things of that nature. But when it comes to what we have done in our church, yes, we have started with very limited engagement. I think our capacity in our sanctuary is 40. We use every other row. We have a row for families. We have a row for single individuals, no more than 3 on these huge pews. And everybody is spaced out. But then we also have used the fellowship hall as an overflow, our large, we call it the fellowship hall, where we eat our food, have our repasts and these kinds of things. We use that as well. And that can seat about 200, but we only allow another 40 or 45 people to even be in there. And we have seen that it has helped, even in the morale. It's helped in our church when the members have wanted to come together. I think it was Dr. Skip who talked about this fellowship of the saints. And I tell people all the time, I know that a lot of people, were concerned about this idea that we didn't come to the church, so the offerings would be down. And Pastor Bullock is right that the bills still have to get paid, whether the people show up or not. But one of the most meaningful things, one of the things that made this one of the worst things, is that the fellowship of the saints wasn't there. And so that's what we have kind of tried to address with this reopening, and it has gone well. We have the building sanitized by a professional sanitizing company who gives us a certificate, and the people are able to look at that certificate and see that the building has been sanitized. And we've had success in doing that very limited opening. And so I don't think that we will change that. I won't agree to change that anytime soon.
Now, one of the things that one of our viewers brought up, and it's a good point, is that initially when we had to close, a lot of churches that had employees were initially affected, okay, because they were employees of the church. They relied on the church for their livelihood, and so they were. And so when it came to the economy, the economic issues of the work for a church, then that struggle became real for those. And so it was good that we had the PPP. But yeah, that is very real, because some people did lose their jobs, and they may have had they may have relied on the church as their financial cornerstone. But thank God we had the paycheck, paycheck protection program that a lot of congregations were able to take advantage of. I'm not sure how that worked in the rural settings, if they were able to if they had the resources or the ability to apply for that. But I know it did work very well. I know for the congregation that I am a member of. And speaking of that, so the last administration was able to make that provision, and now this current administration has made a provision for has passed President Biden has issued an executive order where they're reestablishing the Office of Faith-Based Initiatives. I'm interested in hearing the perspectives on that, Dr. Fortson. You mentioned earlier that you had some experience with that and wanted to share.
Yes, ma'am. And you guys, please forgive me if there's just a little background talking. Everything was clear when we started the show, but I think somebody has invaded my space behind us. So hopefully it won't be too much of a distraction. They're not doing too bad. But yes, as you mentioned, Dr. Lairalaine, what has happened is, I believe it was President Bush some 20 years ago who actually started the Office of Faith-Based Partnerships at Work. And I had the opportunity, Paradise Community Development Corporation, PCDC, my organization, back in 2016, had the amazing privilege and honor of being highlighted as one of the flagship organizations for faith-based partnerships that work. We were in St. Louis, Missouri. And so that office has provided a lot of good work. It's one that's close to my heart because what it says and it's something that we understand in the Black church is that the church has been the epicenter of every progress, just about every progress that the Black community has made, whether that be music or whatever, political ground gains, our rights. It's always been those of us who were in the Black church that has been at the forefront of all of those gains. And so, what our administration understands is that if there's going to be any meaningful progress and if we're going to address social issues, it's going to have to come from those influential institutions in our communities like the Black church. And it's just, and I think that it is wise. I think that it is foresighted for them to understand that if they do not get buy-in from us and those ones who have influence in these communities, it's going to be a failed effort.
That's correct. That's
Absolutely.
correct.
Absolutely. Well, I think it was a good thing that President Biden re-established the faith-based initiative, the partnership office. In his statement of reestablishment, the fact sheet, President Biden has said that they're going to collaborate to address COVID-19 and pandemic issues to boost the economy, recovery, combat systematic racism, increase opportunity and mobility for historically disadvantaged communities, support partnerships and humanitarian work all around the country. And so this is a good move. I think it's headed in the right direction, and it is supposed to be a bipartisan effort. As someone said, that they're not just Democrats dying or Republicans dying from the pandemic or losing their jobs or going hungry or facing eviction in this crisis or facing systematic racism, but all fellow human beings. So I'm excited. I hope that this will trickle down to all of the denominations, particularly the African American denominations, and that we'll be able to see some good that may come out, particularly for those faith-based churches that are impacted and are in communities where they can best serve. That's my constant um, angst, Dr. Lairalaine. How can we best serve our neighbors in our community?
Absolutely, absolutely. And speaking of serving the neighbors in the community, Reverend Bullock, I'm wondering, I'm curious to know what you feel that the impact will have on rural churches. Uh, how does it trickle down? How would that trickle down and impact your congregation and the community that it serves? What do you think?
So, I think it's a good move. It's going to be a great thing. I had an opportunity some time ago when the initiative was first started by Bush. I was an educator and also serving in the church. And so I had that opportunity during that time to be receive some of those funds for the after school program and also for the church. And I was able to work through them, and it was great. It helped the community out great. It helped to give the students and the children, the youth, some extra activities to do. It gave them a sense of purpose and helping them to know about serving in your community. It provided those types of resources. And so I'm looking forward to that again, whereas we are in the rural community, and the suburban community has pretty much been built up around it. There are still some spaces that it will impact our community, as we have a PAL Center, the Police Athletic League, that would probably benefit from that. And at the church, one of the initiatives that we are working on at the church is to create a community garden on our property to bring in the youth and the young adults to work together to build that up. And so that will be a resource that will help to feed those who are, having challenges in that area. And we're looking forward to doing that and working with the community. I know that this faith-based initiative is really very inclusive, the way it has been set up by the Biden administration.
Awesome, awesome. And so, but if I may ask, Reverend Bullock, what is your what is your how many what size is your congregation? I know you say you're the youngest person in the congregation, so that tells me it may not be a very large congregation, which I'm concerned about how what if it would have a greater and it should have a great impact. But what is the size of your congregation?
So I have a membership of 12.
Okay.
About 5 or 6 people come on a regular basis.
Okay.
And everybody else shows up around holidays, Mother's Day, Father's Day, and things of that nature. But since we have not been in the church building, we have had several new people to come on and to join us in our worship experiences and in the meditations that I do on Facebook Live. So we're reaching more people than when we were in the building. Definitely.
That's awesome. And I know that part of it is because of the dynamic preaching that you're giving them on every Sunday as well.
Well, praise the Lord.
Hey,
let me.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Dr. Fortson.
No. What I was going to say was I agree with Pastor Bullock is that this initiative, the initiatives of this office have helped us as well with our community garden, which we had a community garden, and it wasn't even really on my radar until we started to partner and to listen to other agencies who were a part of this office. And it has really enhanced our community engagement because our community garden has done an amazing job of bridging a gap. You'd be surprised at how interested some in the community are planting and harvesting and seeing something that they put in the ground actually grow and come to life. And so I have to agree with her that this office back in 15 and 16 did a great job of helping us to establish our community garden. So it's been a good way.
And we'll be talking about that's. I'm glad y'all brought that up about the community gardens because as you know, food insecurity and farming, particularly Black farming, is one of the justice issues that we talk about on this perspectives on social justice. And later on in the month, we would definitely be talking to other preachers. We found other preachers in other congregations that in some here, one here in Atlanta, but the other 3 are actually in have rural congregations, small rural congregations, and they have thriving gardens, and that's definitely a way for us to stay in touch with the earth and with God and our ancestors. Speaking of that, the impact of we can't close out this discussion without us talking about the impact that the African American church has had on the American diaspora, if I can use that word in this context. There's been a lot of buzz and a lot of conversation and a lot of documentaries on the role of the Black church. We had most recently Mr. Henry Louis Gates to show his documentary on the Black church, but
the other Skip.
The other is I didn't know.
He's known as Skip Gates.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, see, I didn't know that. Yeah. Okay, yeah, the other Skip, right? But how well did the other Skip, do in talking about the Black church? Because there's a lot to be said about the role of the Black church in the Black community, as well as politics, especially American politics. This country was started on what we know was started on those who were seeking religious freedom, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't say that the church. I mean, a lot of people say that this country was not founded on Christian principles, but it certainly was influenced by those.
That's a good way to say that.
Influenced by Christian beliefs. And so then the Black church came along. It was born. We know how that came about, but the impact that the Black church has had on the development of this country, we can't. I want us to close out this discussion, just talk a little bit about what that role was like. And just I want to get your perspectives on that. Reverend Bullock, do you, especially coming from a, I know coming from a rural perspective, but I know you have a perspective on how the church has impacted American life. What do you think?
So, the Black church has been at the forefront of most movements that have happened here in America. All of them have been born out of the Black church or even started within the Black church. And I think about education. When I was growing up, it was home, school, and church. And school pretty much,
Yeah,
school and church
that's right.
represented the community, but it was home, school, and church, and everybody worked together. The preacher and the teacher talked and made plans together. I mean, it was a beautiful time. Many of our educational institutions born out of the Black church. Morris Brown, born out of Bethel AME Church in Atlanta, Georgia.
Right.
And so so much comes from the Black church. We have made a great impact on society. Oprah Winfrey says that the Black church gave people a sense of value, belonging, and worthiness. And she said, I don't know how we could have survived as a people without it. It has always been the foundation of what we do and where we've launched from and the strides that we've made over time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Fortson?
Well, what can we say about the Underground Railroad? From the Underground Railroad to our present functioning, our present operations. I'll give you an example that may kind of sort of encompass this influence that you are referencing. Is that when it comes to this vaccine, and I'm gonna segue you in. And when it comes to this vaccine, I sit on the in our county where our church is and where my office is. I sit on the Community Vaccine Distribution Task Force. What they did, and this came straight from Washington, from the White House, what they did was when they decided that they wanted to have insight and input into how this vaccine should be distributed and have influence into the communities, you know where they came? To the church. They came to us and the faith leaders, and there are several faith leaders on that task force, and they said, listen, your influence is so great that this vaccine distribution project will not be successful if you guys do not have some kind of input. I believe that transcends just the vaccine distribution. It's in just about every area of our life. When I work with and alongside some of the public officials, the Solicitor General's office. When we wanted to get guns off the street, you know what the Solicitor General did? He called together faith leaders and said, listen, we need some help from you guys. That speaks volumes about the influence that the Black church has in our community.
Sure. And I mean, historically, politicians in high places, most notably the Oval Office, have always had conferences and had conversations with Black church leaders. I mean, they've
Absolutely.
always wanted to get something done in the Black community. They knew to come. This is why I encourage more. We got Senator Warnock. I encourage more of our leading pastors, especially, run for public office. We've had some notable preachers in the past to really get out there and be a force in politics. And because America's moral compass right now is being called to the carpet, now it's more important than ever that that church leaders take a role in running for public office. The other thing I wanted to say is, and Dr. Mason, I'm going to let you talk, is that a lot of the we have some experts that are still with us who have studied the history of the Black church, right? And those experts can tell you the story of the significance, even more so than we can, on the significance of the Black church in shaping politics in America, as well as the moral compass of this country. So for sure, we have, there has been an influence. And Dr. Mason, I'm interested in knowing what you have to say as we close out on on the impact that the church has had.
Well, Dr. Lairalaine, the Black church literally saved the African American family post emancipation. If it
Right.
had not been for the Black church, it was the center of the community and the Black pastor during that time. The Black pastor, up until recently, maybe the last 10, 15, 20 years, was considered the pillar of the community and was the one that everybody went to for legal advice, for spiritual advice. The church provided the backdrop for mass meetings and strategy sessions and planning meetings. I think, as Dr. Paul mentioned, I think it was Dr. Paul, the Underground Railroad came through the Black church. Dr. Gates did an excellent job in the documentary, and he only had 4 hours, and that's not enough time to tell the entire story of the church. There were some major omissions, but that was to be expected. What the Black church had to create institutions and universities and colleges. Even before the colleges, they were the only schools. People went to school in the church, and then they went out into the fields to work. Okay, and so Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois did a study on the Negro church around the turn of the century to try to garner and give some better understanding of the value of the Black church. Dr. Carter G. Woodson talked about the Black church. Some could not understand the fervent expression of praise and worship and the music and the frenzy and the excitement. That Paul Fortson's group. That's what they do.
I, I was
Slang.
gonna say
But it's such a rich history. Let me say this: we were blessed at the ITC to have some excellent church history
that's
teachers.
right.
And I really want to shout out the name of Dr. Love H. Welchel, Love Henry Welchel,
Yes.
who helped to bring vigor
Amen.
to the
Amen.
life of the African American church experience. We can't talk enough about it. In all of our various denominations, we may have been founded differently. The AMEs, then the AME Zions. Then you have this whole epic with the Methodist Church and what to do with this enslaved members. Then you have the Kojic Church. In fact, one of the early founders of the Kojic Church was a CME member.
That's right.
Hart was, a pastor in Jackson, Tennessee. And then we got the Catholics, the Presbyterians, other denominations, and so the conversation continues. But we got to celebrate that. But the church has taken a hit too. Okay, pastors
Mm,
taken a hit.
mm.
They are no longer, if you will, the center of the community, of the village as they were. Okay, I agree with you, Dr. Lairalaine. Yes, I think some pastors should offer themselves as candidates for office, because I think it would be a good combination to pastor and to serve publicly. Reverend Dr. Warnock is just serving in the same vein as the Adam Clayton Powell. But
Right.
you had A.D.
That's
Williams.
right.
You had
That
A.D.
is right.
Williams, grandfather Martin Luther King Jr., who established the NAACP. He was an advocate. He pushed to get the first Black high school in Atlanta, Booker T. Washington High School. Daddy King went back to school, and he pushed to get the first Black policeman in Atlanta in 1949. So preachers, pastors are expected to be social justice advocates and be out in the community.
That's right. That's absolutely.
Ooh-wee.
So
Good
in
job.
closing, I also want to encourage everyone out there to read or take a moment, if you will, and even if you don't read the entire book, read some of our contemporary theologians, public theologians that understand the significance of the role that the Black church has played. Most notably, I want to call the names of the writings of the Reverend Dr. James Cone.
Yes.
I want to call the names of Dr. Katie Cannon,
Yes.
Dr. Jacqueline Grant, who is a noted expert on theology from the Black woman's experience.
Mm-hmm.
There are a number of living contemporaries of
Legend.
legendary theologians who can tell the story, who have studied hard and understand about the church from the Black experience, and can talk about how we see God as this God of liberation.
Yes.
And understand about liberation theology.
That's right.
And how it has shaped even the 21st century church. It's still ingrained in our ideology, and for those pastors that whose ideologies don't represent that, they should. So I just want to say, I want to encourage everybody to stay vigilant.
And don't forget Dr. Grant and women's liberation theology as well.
Okay.
In that comment. Okay. Or did I miss you saying that? I was distracted. I had a moment. I missed that.
I won't be leaving my sorrow off, and my fellow sister Reverend.
I didn't think you would. Okay.
So I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Reverend Bullock. Thank you, Dr. Mason, Dr. Fortson, for your contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Tune in next week, y'all. We're gonna still be talking about. We're gonna address some issues that are coming up with climate justice. The week after that, we'll be right back talking about food insecurity. And again, like us on Facebook, Instagram. We're on LinkedIn, and we have the Social Justice Camp for Kids coming up. And so, if you have an interest in that, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Put us up on IG, and we'll make sure we will respond. Until then, I leave you with those famous words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King: that whatever affects one directly affects us all indirectly.
Yes.
Say thank you very much, and you all stay safe, wear your mask, and social distance.
Welcome to Perspectives On, where we're giving the world a voice. We are a faith-based social justice forum where individuals give their perspectives on various topics. It's an opportunity to express their viewpoint, their stance, and their angle on justice issues affecting the community and globally. Each episode features guests presenting their perspective on things like climate change, the church, urban farming, and food insecurity, all through a unique faith lens. Come check us out. Give us your perspective.